morning and welcome to Get Real America.
I'm Bill Edwards.
I'm Brittany Brown.
Welcome to the last day of February. We're wrapping it up today.
Yes, a very big day here, and we are Carrie Lake. Her court case is going to trial today.
Oh, glad to hear it.
Yes, it took a while, but.
Yeah, let's get as far away from the election as possible so there's no possibility of her becoming governor.
Yes.
So that's
always a strategy.
Mm-hmm, yeah, of course she ran and actually probably won the governorship of Arizona, but they had other plans. But it's nice to be a Democrat.
Well, actually, did you know? Guess what's trending on? Katie Hobbs works for the cartel is trending like on Twitter. That's like one of the number one stories on Twitter.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of testimony out there right now.
It seems like the entire Democrat Party is working for the cartel. They're not doing anything to stop them.
Yeah, that's true.
And they're letting all this fentanyl in, and they're letting everything else. There was even an op-ed in the Savannah Morning Page. Savannah Morning News, or what's left of it, yesterday from a professor. I think at Columbus College, who was saying, "Don't blame Biden for this fentanyl coming across."
Oh, geez.
That there was plenty coming across when Trump was president. Yeah, but at least they were trying to do something about it. He did mention that there were twice as many deaths now in the 2 years that Biden's been in office.
That's the thing I don't understand, the protecting of, well, it's not Biden's fault. At what point is it his fault? He's been in office for 2 years, Bill.
Yeah.
I mean, at what point is he accountable for what's going on?
Well, the Dalai Lama for 8 years blamed President Bush for everything that went wrong in his administration, so why not? Or even further back, Ronald Reagan or somebody like that. So.
Well, didn't Biden say the buck stops with him? Didn't he say that at some point?
I think he was talking about his paycheck.
Oh,
yeah.
Well,
the bucks stopped with him. He did. He left the ass off. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's the big guy, getting all that money that Hunter's bringing in from China and elsewhere, and Ukraine, of course. But the accountability for Ukraine is getting a little out of hand. And we're going to be talking about that this morning as well. But right up the road in Walterboro, South Carolina, that's had the spotlight put on that beautiful little community, has been the Alex Murdaugh trial. Alex's brother took the stand yesterday, and he was quite emotional. One of these people that he was so congenial, and they said when he met everybody with a smile, and he was very calm during the process. But once he got on the stand and started talking about his nephew, it was a different story.
For the News at 11, I'm Dawn Baker. The defense rested its case today just before 5 o'clock. John Marvin Murdaugh described having to clean up the scene of his nephew's murder after SLED agents cleared it. The defense called him to the stand as its 14th and likely final witness. Our Tyler Mannion has more on the emotional testimony.
Excuse me, I'm going to have a hard time talking about Paul because we had a very special relationship.
It's a bond we've heard about throughout the trial. John Marvin saying he's one of the last people to see Paul Murdaugh alive.
He was playing with the kids in the yard, being Paul.
Is that the last time you saw him?
That is the last time I saw him.
John Marvin also said he was the first back to the scene the morning after the murders.
For some reason, I thought it was something that I needed to do for Paul to clean it up. And I can promise you, no mother or father or aunt or uncle should ever have to see and do what I did that day.
Through tissue-wiped eyes, he explained law enforcement had already cleared the scene, but not cleaned it. Just one of his gripes with SLED's handling of this case. Similarly to when he approached an agent knowing the location of Maggie's phone.
And he said, no need, we have technology coming later today that we should be able to find it. And it blew me away.
The prosecution flipped that cooperation point back at the witness, asking if he thought his brother was helpful to law enforcement during the investigation, and followed with this.
So when did you first learn that your brother was down at the kennels just before the murders? 2 days ago with the rest of us?
No.
Alex's attorneys mixed that emotion with expert details as they closed out their case for the jury.
The totality of the evidence is more suggestive of a two-shooter scenario.
Defense witnesses disagreeing with opinions given during the state's case. This crime scene reconstruction specialist focusing on that multiple shooter theory.
Structurally difficult for the same shooter to have two long arms. and no practical reason for that to happen. Add that to what I believe happened to the shooter who fired first with the shotgun, and I think it tips in favor of the probability of two shooters.
It's an idea the prosecution also didn't directly dispute. Reporting from Colleton County, Tyler Mannion, WTOC News.
Lead prosecutor Creighton Waters says the state has 4 or 5 witnesses to call in response to the defense's case. Then both sides will give their closing arguments.
So we could see this wrap up this week, though.
Yeah, I think the trial's going to be over this week and go to the jury, and who knows how long it's going to take them to deliberate. They probably have some intelligent people on this jury as opposed to the one with O.J. Simpson, and they may not. They may actually deliberate for quite a while.
Yeah.
There's certainly lots of evidence to go over, and this trial has taken about 6 weeks.
Yeah, and I think honestly, this is one of the I don't know. I don't think I've really seen a ton of bias with a lot of the media for or against him. This is one of the trials that I haven't seen that with in a long time. But
our local reporters have done an excellent job of covering this. I'm extremely impressed with Tyler Mannion and some of the other reporters who have been covering this. So it's up to the jury pretty soon. They're going to, like I said, there are going to be some counter calls today from other witnesses or experts coming across. But we'll just see how it happened. But to see John Marvin on the stand yesterday, just pouring his heart out and say, nobody should ever see what I had to see after. With that, I can imagine what that. I can't even begin to imagine what that crime scene looked like.
No, absolutely not. And like they said, they had a very close relationship, and Paul was living on that property when he was killed. So
yeah, so we will see.
Yes, we will. And we will also see what Jesse Petrie has to say. He was actually on Lawmakers this week. And if you do not watch Lawmakers, it is a great way to get a wrap-up on the session here.
Yeah. I wish South Carolina Education TV would do a similar wrap-up of the South Carolina legislature. I think all the state TV channels ought to be doing that for their states. But Georgia does a great job. GPB does a great job of covering the legislative session under the Gold Dome every year, and Lawmakers is one of them. And that was another wrap-up yesterday. Jesse Petrie, a state representative here, was talking about a place called Green Island that is owned by the Lewis family, very prominent here in Savannah. They own one of the largest Ford car dealerships in the South, as well as a lot of other property. They were also in broadcasting for years. When I was actually working at WJCL, which is where we get the call letters, J.C. Lewis, they were still locally owned. And working for the Lewises for almost 20 years, and it was an honor and a pleasure. And they own a place called Green Island, and there's some debate about that and what we're going to do with that. And Jesse was on last night on Lawmakers with Donna Lowry explaining it.
That's our Capitol Report. Now let's dig deeper into some individual bills dealing with land in Georgia. Joining me are Republican Representative Jesse Petrie of Savannah. He is chair of the Nations and Aging Committee, and Democratic Representative Mary Frances Williams of Marietta. Welcome to Lawmakers. It's your first time. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're going to start with you, Chairman Petrie, your recent announcement of Green Island. I want people to hear more about it. Green Island is privately owned. It's 450 acres, an island in the southern end of Chatham County. And Chairman Petrie, before we get into the specifics of your announcement and what you have to tell us, describe it a little bit. You've been there.
Oh yeah, I've been all over all of the islands around where I grew up, and this is yet another island on the Georgia coast. A lot of people don't realize how well we've protected the Georgia coast in this state. We have, without question, the most protected coast in the country. We have 12 barrier islands in this state, only 4 of which have any appreciable human population. Now, this island is not a barrier island, but it's yet another island that we can preserve and protect. And as our state explodes with population growth, the time to do that, as I always say, is now, not 10 years from now. This was a great opportunity to take a jewel, an island that is just environmentally and historically has so much value, and try to preserve it forever. And so I've acted as a liaison with the family, with the county, and with the state to try to find a way forward to save and protect this island forever. Otherwise, it would eventually likely have been developed.
And it involves this $3 million grant.
Yes, ultimately, to try to find a solution, we needed to get the state to I initially began by trying to get the state to purchase it, to add it to our Skidaway Island stakeout. And so we found a way by partnering with the county, and so we used GOSA funds. The Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Act is a fund that we've an outdoor sporting goods equipment is sold. A portion of those sales tax go to land preservation in this state. That was a bill we passed in about 2018, one of the best bills I've seen come out of the legislature since I've been there. And it allows us some funds for this purpose. And so we're using those funds, and our success was, and so thankful to the governor and to the commissioner for supporting me on this. We've been able to get $3 million to dedicate to this purchase to help us to find a way to make sure that we preserve this island.
So at some point it'll be a park that people can go to, boating. What do you expect people to use it for?
We certainly expect public access, ultimately owned by the county. There's still a lot of negotiations to take place between the family and the county, so I'm limited with what I can say there. Okay. But we clearly see a path forward to protect this island, and yes, it would be for the public benefit. You know, if ever there's a time, we need young people, especially after this pandemic, we've learned how important it is that we have a place for young people to be outside, to exercise, to enjoy being outdoors, and this will just be another opportunity to do that.
Not just young people, I'll just say
everybody,
that.
But especially young people.
All right. Representative Williams, I know one of your interests in terms of land is Okefenokee Swamp, and there is a bill to help with that in terms of Georgians enjoying it.
Yes, Chairman Darlene Taylor from Camilla has a bill, House Bill 71, and it would outlaw in the Okefenokee Swamp. And right now, the EPD, Environmental Protection Division of Natural Resources, is considering giving a mining permit to this Twin Pines mining company. And it's just something that, in my opinion, should not be done. There's no place on earth like the Okefenokee, and I think we need to preserve it. It's one of the wonders of the world, and mining would disturb the water table. There are a lot of hydrologists and other folks who have testified about it. And Chairman Taylor has 51 signatures. It's very much supported by bipartisans, but to date she has not been able to get a hearing in the Natural Resources and Environment Committee.
Oh, well, that's interesting. You're a signer on that bill.
Yeah, I was one of the top signers, Darlene.
Does that surprise you? You haven't been able to get a hearing?
Well, it's very, you know, there's some real legitimate concerns people have because this is private property. We believe, and I believe, as does Representative Williams, that, you know, there is such a unique location about in this Trail Ridge. Geographically, it's called the Trail Ridge, and the hydrology of that site, as the adjacent position that it holds next to the park, to the swamp, makes it rather unique, and we believe, therefore, this is a very appropriate measure, and I'm very. But I do understand those that are opposed. I understand why, but that's our challenge with getting it to a hearing.
Well, 51 signers is a lot. We'll keep an eye on that between now and crossover day. Representative Williams, while you were on with environmental issues, you recently dropped a bill to deal with coal ash ponds.
There you are.
I agree with the Democrat for a change. My Okefenokee Swamp is not the best idea they ever had.
Well, and there are some things that we really do need to start to preserve, and you and I have talked about this a lot, that we're seeing in the Savannah area, and a lot of these warehouses that are being built in areas that, you know, make it kind of an eyesore, and it's just...
We're turning it into a warehouse. Good heavens. I mean, I'm all in favor of business and getting more business here and getting more people here, but honest to goodness, you go by these places, and some of these warehouses, I mean, geez, they're the size of small cities.
Yes, well, and I mean, and it's turning into, if you are going down I-16 where the Mitsubishi plant is, there are now 2 additional buildings there. They're very large. They have like a thin layer of trees so you can still see them off of the highway. But, you know, it's not appealing to look at. And I understand that we have to have these buildings, but I think that at a certain point we also need to think about, just like the clearing in Bryan County. I mean, that piece of land that's been cleared for the Hyundai plant.
Yeah, the Bill Coal burners.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's devastating to see all of this stuff disappear. And when you look at the environmental impacts as well, it's interesting that the EPA and these environmental activists, they are very careful on what they choose to be activists against.
Yeah. The selective activism, just like the selective outrage from racists on the Dilbert comic strip situation, which we'll discuss another time. But nevertheless, coming up next, Prager University strikes again as they try to educate the American public because the public school system ain't.
Yep. What's going on with climate change when we get back?
Speaking of which.
Serving the Savannah area with the power of the Shield since 1934, with personal insurance, employee benefits, and business insurance. With integrity, security. For more information, go to thepoweroftheshield.com.
At Get Real America, we'd like to thank the Southeast Georgia Republican Assembly for all their efforts on making a difference in our communities.
When you're looking to buy a business or sell a business, the experts at Best Business Brokers have you covered. Whether you're ready to cash in on your years of hard work or you're taking that first step in buying a business of your own, they're here to guide you through the process and make sure you get the best possible. By having Best Business Brokers assist you when you buy a business or sell a business, they handle the legwork of the intricate process. This ensures a smooth transition of ownership, allowing you to immediately or receive payment for your business as soon as possible. With base operations in Savannah and Charleston, they service all of Georgia and South Carolina. If you're considering starting a business here, the mild winters and 5-tiered economic areas make these the perfect places to do so. If you're ready to buy a business or sell a business, then you're ready to contact Best Business Brokers. Visit their website at b3brokers.com or call at 9-349-0940.
Welcome back to Get Real America. I'm Brittany Brown.
Wrapping up the month of February here, and Prager University. I am so impressed with Dennis Prager and everything that he has established, from his talk show to the things that he has that when his public appearances. Also, Prager University, where he has turned a lot of lives around of kids that said they were committed atheists and have become
communists.
Communists and have become Christians and capitalists. Oh, I don't know, maybe the truth works.
It sure does. And Alex Epstein is the one that did this on climate change, and he is an advocate of banning fossil fuels, which I don't think we hear, but
do hear, but and by the way, we need to also get rid of this term fossil fuels. There aren't that many dinosaurs, okay? The Earth makes this stuff. Otherwise, abandoned wells from 30 years, well, this one's dried up and they come back and the thing's full again. Said, I don't think many dinosaurs died in the last 30 years to cause all this.
So what you're saying, there's a piece of property that has a dried up well on it that's going for pretty cheap. You need to buy it up.
Might not be a bad investment. I mean, it may take a while for you to recoup your cost, but you might.
I like it. I like it.
So at Prager University, they tell the awful truth, and sometimes the truth hurts.
The world faces a serious crisis, one that will ruin whole economies and lead to need and death. The crisis is related to climate, but not in the way you're probably thinking. It's the global energy crisis, aid crisis created by climate change policies. These have led to a shortage of fossil fuels, oil, coal, and natural gas, the fuels that provide over 80% of the world's energy. A shortage of anything leads to higher prices. That's just basic economics. Fossil fuel shortages have led to higher energy prices. Industry powers every other industry. This has led to higher prices of almost everything, everywhere. We are already seeing the consequences. Inflation. Inflation spares no one, but those who live paycheck to paycheck suffer the most. Purchase becomes a major decision. Inflation in the US in 2022 was around 8%. In the UK, 10%, and in many developing countries, much higher. The leading driver of this inflation has been the cost of energy. Deadly winters. Contrary to popular belief, far more people die from cold than heat. Saving lives from the danger of cold requires low-cost, reliable energy. Without it, people on the margins can't adequately heat their homes during the harsh winter months. Even in wealthy Europe, literally thousands will die for lack of energy. Widespread job losses. When energy prices increase dramatically, industries scale back or shut down altogether. As the Wall Street Journal reports, Europe's energy crisis has left few businesses untouched. Some industries, such as the energy sector, are shutting factories that analysts and executives say might never reopen, imperiling thousands of jobs. Mass starvation. Modern agriculture depends on fossil fuels. Natural gas is a prime component of fertilizer, and farming equipment is largely powered by diesel fuel. When natural gas and oil prices go up, food becomes more expensive around the world. According to the president of the World Farmers Organization, prices are 78% in 2021. In many regions in the developing world, farmers simply can't afford fertilizers, or even if they could, the fertilizers are not enough fertilizer means not enough food. While the whole world suffers from an energy crisis, the worst affected are poor nations who are getting outbid for scarce energy supplies. Bangladesh has recently experienced widespread power outages. They simply can't get the energy they need. A desperate Europe is grabbing all it can, leaving this East Asian nation literally in the dark. This will lead to civil unrest. We saw this in Sri Lanka in 2022. Violent riots racked the country following massive crop failures. A leading reason for the crop failures, a lack of fertilizer due to anti-fertilizer policies. The root cause of all these problems and the very real suffering that results is the same: not enough fossil fuel. But there is no shortages of fossil fuel. We have all the fossil fuel we need, and then some. We are literally standing on it. We just can't get to it. We can't get to it because governments have decided we shouldn't use fossil fuels. They say we're in a climate crisis. While climate change, humans impacting climate, is a real thing, climate crisis is not. The world is slowly becoming warmer, at a cold point in geological history when many more people die of cold than of heat. This doesn't at all justify rapidly restricting global fossil fuel use. Fossil fuels actually make us far safer from climate by providing low-cost energy for the amazing machines that protect us against storms, protect us against extreme temperatures, and alleviate drought. Climate disaster deaths have decreased 98% over the last century. The only rational approach to reducing fossil fuels' climate impacts is a long-term one based on developing truly competitive, reliable forms of energy, most promisingly nuclear energy. Unfortunately, instead of taking this rational approach, governments declared a climate crisis and started fossil fuels, with no viable replacement. They pretended that solar and wind could somehow replace fossil fuels. But since these fuels are inherently unreliable, they can go to near zero at any given time, there was never any reason to believe this. Now we're suffering the consequences of their folly. Instead of rapidly expanding our fossil fuel production, we're begging Saudi Arabia and Venezuela to expand theirs. Once enjoyed energy security is now dependent on Russia for the natural gas it needs, to heat its homes and power its industry. And outrageously, instead of apologizing for the disastrous anti-fossil that caused today's energy crisis, our so-called experts are confidently doubling down, advocating for even more aggressive elimination of fossil fuel production. Every nation will suffer from the global energy crisis, but those with the least will suffer the most. Many will die, sacrificed on the altar of a climate crisis that doesn't exist. How long will we let this continue? I'm Alex Epstein, author of Fossil Future for Prager University.
Thank you for watching this video. To keep PragerU videos, please consider making a tax-deductible donation.
Money well spent.
Yes, it is. And they do a great job of simplifying things and
They really
making sure
do.
that we have the talking points that we need to have these discussions and a better understanding of why the things that we've been told have been lies.
Yeah, especially when you have like old Boltneck himself, John Kerry flying around the world explaining why he has to fly on private jets and you don't.
He's super important.
Yeah, he really is,
very
and that we don't need. And right now, China is building coal power plants right and left. Why aren't we complaining about that?
Well, we don't complain a lot about the things that China's doing, which I find quite interesting. But if the U.S. is doing it, we're very, very bad people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure enough. So that I don't know why that video should be required viewing in our public schools. I mean, every time some left-wing loon comes along and puts out a bunch of crap like Al Gore with the an inconvenient lie, that all of a sudden this is required for the kids to watch. He's called into Hollywood. They gave him an Academy Award for that piece of lying. And this is a film that's now, what, 20 years old or more?
And we were supposed to be dead 10 years ago, is that
Yeah, exactly. And in 5 years, kids wouldn't know what snow was because of global warming. And in his book, there's not a single reference to any of his scientific studies. There's nothing in the index. There's no opinion that has any of the where did he get this information? Where did this come from? And I don't know if he's ever darkened the door of a science class.
Well, also, they changed it from global warming to climate change.
Yeah, they had to,
Global warming.
because they'd have these global warming conferences, and they had to be called off because of a blizzard.
Yes, well,
Yeah.
I tell that to my parents who just arrived back in Utah with like 2 feet of snow. And they've had one of the best winters for snow that they've had in a long time, which is great. Utah needs the water, but...
So does California, and they've had heavy snow. But snow in Los Angeles is the first time since 1989. He said, in fact, Jimmy Fallon, Fox, he is hysterical. He said that he was sitting in the other night for Greg Gutfeld on Gutfeld, and he said, it's getting so bad in Los Angeles that Governor Newsom has actually advised the homeless to go inside to go to the bathroom. So that's how bad it's getting. Nevertheless, that's where we are. All right, coming up next.
We are going to be covering the book festival that we talked about last week.
Yes, sir. We had the Savannah Book Festival. Was another smashing success. We're going to talk to two authors who are great authors in their own right, and when they get together to collaborate on books, it is absolutely outstanding. Coming up, we're going to be hearing from Tom Clavin
and Bob Drury.
And Bob Drury next.
At Get Real America, we are Savannah, but we'd like to hear from other communities as well. We have a lot in common.
Serving the Savannah area, The Shield, since 1934, with personal insurance, employee benefits, and business insurance. with integrity, security, and trust. For more information, go to thepoweroftheshield.com.
At Get Real America, we want to make sure that the real story gets out, and you can help us as a sponsor or as an advertiser to make sure that that word does get out to the community.
Be a sponsor and support your local community here at Get Real America.
I don't think it's an accident that I ended up writing music for a living, because I think I lived in a house where I saw how deeply it affected everyone in the house. And just how much everyone defined themselves by the music they listened to.
Music as a framework, I think, gave my parents my identity from a young age. You can like any music that feel happy, and now when I hear certain songs, I think of them, and I think of them in their happiest state, and it makes me happy.
If they seem like they're having trouble talking about something, I try to tell them about a time when I felt something similar.
Whatever the issue was, we would taunt and how important it was that they had come to us because we could always help them. I think the real important point, we always told them, no matter what you do, no matter what happens, we will help you through it no matter what it is.
Welcome back to Get Real America.
I'm Bill Edwards.
I'm Brittany Brown.
Wrapping up the month of February. It's amazing. Every February, we just had the 16th annual Savannah Book Festival, and it has become one of the best in the world. I remember when Hoda Kotb was releasing her book about 5 years ago, and her publicist said, "Got to get to the Savannah Book Festival. That's one of the biggies." And she said, "Oh, okay," and she did. And speaking of Hoda, I mean, apropos nothing, but yesterday the Today Show, they did a live shot from Forsyth Park with Mayor Van Johnson and my good buddy Kim Gusby. Kim and I worked together years ago at JCL, and she's been with Channel 3 now, WR, over 30 years now. And she is just a wonderful, wonderful lady. But they featured Savannah as one of the winter warm-up, a place to get away from the cold West Savannah.
Yep.
Well, this was another smashing success, and I love reading Bob Drury and Tom Clavin. They write individually, but they also collaborate on many New York Times runaway bestsellers. This is the latest one called The Last Hill. It is. I think there's that we've told all the stories about World War II. Suddenly, and these guys, they stumble. I think it is a divine intervention of some sort, because they stumble across some of the great. And it's almost like they stumble across. They don't live anywhere near each other, but somebody will say something to them, and somebody else will say something. Somebody will say something to Bob, and somebody will say something to Tom, and Tom calls Bob, or Bob calls Tom and says, "I found out about so and so." Funny you should mention that, because that's the same thing I was discussing at dinner with somebody the other day. Well, this is about this also has a local flavor to it, because it's of a battalion, and this is the home of the 1st Ranger Battalion at Hunter Army Airfield here, and a battle that defined World War II, Last Hill. And it is about this 400-foot hill that they were trying to take. If they take this one, they go into Germany. So Hitler told the Nazi soldiers, the Wehrmacht, said, "You will die, will not let them cross that hill, because if if the Allied troops come into Germany, it's war over." So this is a great, and I had a chance, and they were both here for the book festival. Tom had been here about 12 years before, but he was back along with Bob here for the first time, and talked to him about The Last Hill, but about their collaboration and how they like to write.
All right, pleasure to be talking with Bob Drury and Tom Clavin. Their new book is out, gentlemen. Heck, I know too.
Thank you.
This is a little debut for you.
Yes, it is, Bill, and what a wonderful town. What a wonderful town. Everyone's so nice, hospitable. It couldn't be better.
Yeah. What's your impressions of when you come to an event like this? People seem to be very fascinated by what you have to say and how the ideas came about.
Well, I think Tom said it best during our talk. I am. How do I put this? I'm a fan of the big band genre of military history.
Mm-hmm.
You hand me a book about William Tecumseh Sherman or Patton, Genghis Khan, I'll eat it up. But that's not what we write. We write about ordinary combat, and I think that's what drew us both to the genre we write. It never ceases to amaze me that anyone from a bar bouncer to a kid who was in the choir in high school the year before to Tony Ruggieri can suddenly transform themselves into war fighters that fight for this country and protects our freedom.
And Tom, your second trip here, how do you compare it to the last time and stuff?
It seems like the festival's gotten bigger, it's evolved. They definitely have everything down, synchronized very well. What hasn't changed at all is the courtesy from the organizers to the volunteers, to the people who attend, who seem to be glad to be here and glad to, they're obviously book lovers. So that hasn't changed. The courtesy is something that I think is really in abundance here, and it's nice to come down to experience that.
Great collaboration, and you talk to our hearts, since this is the home of the 1st Ranger Battalion.
Right.
So we have a lot of military connections galore.
Yeah, oh yeah. And I think that makes the festival special. I think it could be one of the reasons why they wanted us to be here, because you don't have a lot of mainstream nonfiction military history. There's a lot of military published, but to have a mainstream that as something that can be read by a lot of different people is what the Last Hill is all about. So I think that's one reason why the Savannah Book Festival had an interest.
And Bob, because these people are such heroic figures that we don't know about, and these people to open up to you who have not told their story before. We've had warriors die, and their sons come up to us and said, "We found this chest of medals in the attic we didn't know about."
Right, yeah. Right. Well, that's the meat on the bone of the narrative. Find those letters, those journals, those diaries. Early on in our collaborations, there were still enough days are petering out. So we have to find Walter Sart, the surgeon for the Ranger Battalion. When Tom found his son in his 70s, who still had his father's hand.
Like, oh God, yes, please. So they get this from, the horse's mouth, and as Bob said in the interview, they talk to the individual. They talk about the grunt, what we refer to in the military as the grunts, the guy, the boots on the ground, just the individual soldier. One of the best experiences I had when I was getting a series of books from Time Life, Once Upon a Time, about the Civil War. There were letters to parents that Civil War soldiers had written back, Dad, field. And and to see these letters from just these kids, and they're 18, 19 years old, maybe even younger, writing these letters. Mom, I hope you never see what I have seen. War has never been pretty, and I think General Robert E. Lee said it's a good thing that war is so horrible, otherwise we might fall in love with it. And that's the horrible thing. And it was a famous Russian leader, and I can't remember who it was exactly, said, a single death is a tragedy. Said 1 million deaths statistic.
Yes.
And especially having the local flavor here about being Rangers, and to find this story, and one of the.
Well, and one of the things that I love about this is that kids, especially now, and I also think they need heroes that are, they're real men, and they do, and they're, I can't remember who said this, it may have been one of them actually that said that they want to talk about, ordinary men doing extraordinary things. Yep, and I think that those are the stories.
There are no extraordinary men. There are only ordinary men who do extraordinary things in extraordinary circumstances. Exactly right. And by the way, being the Rangers, one of the unsung heroes of Omaha Beach and the D-Day landing was General Norm Cota. And he was portrayed by Robert Mitchum in the movie The Longest Day. But he's the one who gave the Rangers their the motto that they use, lead the way. Okay. Rangers lead the way. He lands on the beach about an hour after the battle has started, and he runs for cover like everybody else. And he says, "Who are you guys?" I said, "Well, we're Rangers." And he said, "Well, let's don't die here. Let's go inland and die. Let's clean this up. Rangers lead the," and so they did, and that's been their motto ever since. General Norm Cota. Up next.
We are going to be talking about what Ron DeSantis is up to these days.
The hits just keep on. The hits just keep on coming.
They sure do. We'll talk about that when we get back.